If somebody were to stumble upon a sealed video game, and let's just say it's an old sealed video game, the reaction might be something along the lines of, "Oh my goodness, how did this manage to remain unopened for all this time?" And you know, this kind of reminds me of somebody, and that somebody is my old goofy dog, Schroeder, the 100-pound golden retriever. And just bear with me on this one, I promise I'll connect the dots. So Schroeder loved bread, and one day we thought it'd be funny to just give him an entire loaf of bread and see what he does with it. So we give him the loaf of bread, and immediately he reacts like he was just given the world's greatest treasure. He doesn't know what to do with this thing. So we let him into the backyard, and he's pacing around nervously, trying to figure out what to do with this loaf of bread. And by this point, we're not really too worried that he's going to eat it, because clearly he's got bigger plans for this loaf of bread. So a couple of weeks go by, maybe it was a couple of months, I don't remember, and by this point we've totally forgotten about that loaf of bread. And my family's out in the backyard one day doing yard work, and we stumble upon, underneath one of the hedges, the loaf of bread, and we have a good laugh like, check it out, it's that loaf of bread we gave Schroeder, and it ended up here. No animals or anything ate it after all this time. It's just a loaf of bread hanging out underneath this hedge. A nice little family bonding moment. Now, if I wanted to try to recreate that magic by taking a loaf of bread myself and sticking it out there somewhere in the backyard, and then one day being like, hey, check it out, there's a loaf of bread out here, would my family think that's just as funny? Probably not. It's just not the same. One of the things that made sealed games noteworthy to begin with is the fact that they're an oddity because they are still sealed. It's ironic that something that is designed to be opened up and played is somehow still sealed all these years later. So because there are far more people now intentionally keeping their games sealed, I would argue this makes the stories behind why games are still sealed far less interesting. Quick example for you. Tell me which of the following is more interesting. Okay, so this is a real story, by the way, this first one. So back in the late 80s, perhaps it was the early 90s, a parent buys Super Mario Bros. 3 for their child to be given as a gift. However, before they're able to give the game as a gift, the child receives the game from somebody else somehow. So the parent sticks the game in a drawer somewhere, and maybe they meant to return it at some point, but they don't. And the game is forgotten about, and it's just sitting in that drawer all this time. Now, years later, that parent finds that game, and it's like, oh my goodness, look at this game that is decades old just sitting here still sealed. Or option number 2, yeah, I bought a game on limited run and I'm keeping it sealed because I think it'll be worth a lot of money in the future. Now, some of you might be thinking, stories be darned, a sealed game is a sealed game, and yeah, sure, that's true, but if way more people are intentionally keeping games sealed, then it makes them less rare, which is a huge part of what has historically made them such an oddity to begin with. But with that being said, I think it's fair to say that for some people, sealed games just piss them off no matter what. And I think a lot of this comes from the almost culture that's developed around intentionally keeping games sealed and the high dollar activity surrounding it. Whereas back in the day, sealed games were almost seen more as like an accidental sort of thing, and for a lot of people, that was just a lot less offensive to them. Now, I suppose that the counter argument to saying that keeping video games sealed is not natural would be to say that it is natural, because if humans are choosing to do something, then by virtue of humans being a part of nature, whatever they choose to do is therefore natural, in which case that was natural. What I find interesting is that the sealed game market is here to stay, and especially in this regard, let's just say almost everybody stopped keeping games sealed. There was this widespread effort to make sure every game gets opened, and everyone's working really hard to make sure this happens. Well, all it takes is one or two people to look around and think, everybody's opening their games now. If I kept this one game sealed, it would be the only one, and that would make it all the more valuable, all the more rare. And that way, there's always going to be people keeping games sealed. Sealed games appear to be here to stay, so get used to liking them, get used to hating them, get used to however it is that you feel about them, because you're probably going to have to be feeling that way about them for a long time. But with that said, I would be curious exactly how you felt about sealed games, say, 5 or 10 years ago, before a lot of the major hype and buzz surrounding them came about. Did they bother you less? Have they just always really bothered you? Or is it more just something that recently started to rub you the wrong way with all the high dollar amounts flying around? So, with that said, leave your comment down below and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the red bird, yeah, and he's talking about me.